couple of weeks ago, my kids discovered a relationship between addition and subtraction when we were working on a number string that you see here in the top right. I recorded, after doing the number string, I recorded some of what they said about what they noticed about the numbers and the equations. And then a week or so after that, when we were ready, we started working on relationships between addition and subtraction. And there's a couple pictures of some of our posters here. Now, please know that the equations that are written there were a result at the very end of the equations that we found in their work after going through the whole 5 practices and the connect phase. I just recorded them there because we actually have about 8 posters up on the wall that have related addition subtraction facts because we just keep noticing them over and over again. This week in our math lessons, we're moving on to compare problems, and we are working on this difference unknown, how many fewer today, right here. The problem from today was this. We started with a numberless word problem. Carson has some dragons, Mason has some dragons. How many fewer dragons does Carson have than Mason? These word problems are so tricky just based on their language. I purposely take out the numbers, put in the word some, just to make us reason with the language, because this is difficult enough as it is. If you skip that, you'll be hurting later. Something else that we talk about is the word fewer. We've done comparing numbers. We're continuing to do it, but we've done like our big units on it, I guess you'd say. But we still took a minute to talk about that word fewer because students have a lot more experience with the word more, and the word fewer tends to throw them off a little bit. So when we first looked at the task for today about Carson and Mason, I asked students what they noticed, and they said Mason has more than Carson. It doesn't tell us how many dragons Mason or Carson has. Carson has fewer dragons than Mason. So I just recorded what they noticed here about this one. After noticing, we chose a number for Mason to have. We said, okay, Mason has 16. And then I asked again, what did you notice? River said she noticed it has to be less than 16. And what she's talking about it is how many dragons Carson has to be less than 16. And we had a discussion on how do we know that. And the language and the word problem, what does that tell us? We also discussed that it can't be 0, that Carson can't have 0 because the problem said some. And this is all from the kids. The kid says some is a number that is more than 0. And so they said some is greater than 0. So we recorded all of this on the board before we even got started on the task. Once the kiddos were ready to work on the task, I gave them a little paper that had it on here like this and asked them, what information do you need before you solve it? And they said they need to know how many Carson has. Well, today I let them pick their own number, thanks to Kristen Gray for the idea. And so here the student chose that Carson had 12. And so I chose this representation to be like a concrete example, so we can start with the CRA. So this would be a concrete example of the way this student was solving it. Another student, they kind of did everything here with concrete objects, representational, abstract with their equations. They also have drawings for representational. They chose 15. It's kind of hard to see, but they chose 15. And I'll be asking kids when we get back to this, because we didn't get to finish today, so when we finish it the next day, asking kids, how does this relate back to the problem? I can't really connect all of the ideas with the representations from the students because they chose different numbers, but I can make sure to ask to go back into the problem itself. And where is the 16 that Mason had? And where is the 15 that Carson had? And how many fewer? Where do we see that? How do you think they use the number line to do that? How does this equation that they wrote like the number line that they used, etc.? This was a group of students that were working together, and they chose to graph it, which was great because in our last unit we were infusing the additional supporting standard of graphing with the addition subtraction, and that goes really well with the comparing numbers unit. So you can see these students, they graphed it. They also were writing equations. If you're looking at the ones at the top under the word Carson, her sixes, she writes them backwards. So I know she's not writing 12, take away 6. She's writing 16, take away 1. Another representation here, someone used the tape diagram, and I always try to highlight this whenever I can. It tends to be a little harder for students to like leave the part whole mat behind and move on to the tape diagram. And notice that he used addition, so we're still going to be having that conversation of how can addition help me subtract and vice versa, which was one of my mathematical goals last week, was how does one help me with the other. And what do we notice between them? Another idea that came out was right here using the number line, and some other kids use the number line as well. But something that we can highlight when we do this is this student as well is showing the relationship between addition and subtraction. Something we've been continuing to notice, but also where it says Carson has 7 fewer dragons is proof that they're going back into the context of the story problem, and we see that in some of the other ones as well. And then the last one here, just another number line that we could show that the kids have done. This one, the student chose the number 14, and she used the number line to show that as well as her equation. So she is working both with representational and the abstract.